Hi, I'm Zeke Ortiz along with Chloe Wolk and DJ Meisner, and I'm going to be walking you personally through our AP Stats final project. In our AP Stats final project, we explored the relationship between CO2 concentration in classrooms and the respective grade averages of the students in those classrooms. The results of our experiment have the potential to be extremely relevant to any students who attend SR, as it could prove that any poor grades are not actually their fault.
At high concentrations, carbon dioxide will actually reduce the cognitive function of the brain, and these effects can begin to be felt at a concentration of 1000 ppm.
In order to collect our CO2 concentration data, we had to use a CO2 monitor and go into each of the classrooms in order to measure the concentration of CO2 within the air. We then had to contact all of the respective teachers of the classrooms that we measured the CO2 concentration of in ppm and ask for their class grade averages. The inference tests that we conducted include 3 TCIs for the CO2 concentration for all of the classrooms that we measured, the CO2 concentration for all of the classrooms that actually responded to us, and a TCI for the grade averages of the responding classrooms. And then we had to construct an LSRL. The conditions for a TCI are that the data come from an SRS and that the populations are approximately normally distributed. We need to satisfy these conditions in order to ensure the validity of our tests. Now, for all of our TCIs, we were not actually able to conduct an SRS, so we didn't meet that condition for any of them. However, our population size was greater than 30, so we did actually meet the approximately normal condition because the TE test is robust. Taking this into account, we are going to continue with our investigation with caution. As TCI tests are robust for populations of greater than 30, we did not need to construct NPPs or box plots for either sets of data, but we did anyway in order to get a better grasp of our data, and the NPP's slight curve and the box plot's slight asymmetry showed that maybe our data was not the most normally distributed of all data.
This is our display for the CO2 levels of grade participants. As you can see, the NPP is not linear, it has a slight curve, and the box plot is not symmetric, it's slightly right skewed. Here are the graphs for grade averages. We have a wonky MPP and an extremely left skewed box plot.
And here we have the TCI for the CO2 in all of the SRHS classrooms that we measured. So here we actually got an interval of 926.07 to 1155.8 ppm of CO2 in the classrooms. This is the TCI for the CO2 levels in grade participants' rooms. So we allowed mu to equal the true mean CO2 concentration for all the classrooms at SR, and after we conducted a complete TCI procedure, we ended up with an interval of 938.51 ppm to 1223.8 ppm, which actually includes 1000 ppm, which is the OSHA level at which cognitive effects in people can be measured. This is the TCI for average grades from all the teachers that responded to our request to see their grades. So here we let mu equal the true average grade in classes, and we constructed a 95% TCI with a conservative degrees of freedom of 29, and we ended up with an interval from 78.595 to 82.072, which is pretty average, I'd say. For our LSRL, the explanatory variable X was the CO2 concentration, while the response variable Y was the grade average within each classroom. After we had constructed our model, we ended up with an equation of Y hat is equal to 82.17 minus 0.017x. So a slightly negative line, and our R value was negative 0.1397. So that R value is very close to 0, which means a very, very weak negative linear association. Another possible reason as to the lack of conclusive results is the concentration of CO2 within the SR classrooms was not actually high enough to completely impair cognitive ability. As other studies, concentration of CO2 actually drifted up into the 2000 and above ppm area. Our study does not show that at SR, CO2 level affects grades. However, there are studies out there that do show that CO2 in higher concentrations will actually affect grades. A great example of a study conducted by another third party that is not SR is the study conducted by OSHA that shows exactly what I just said. Some disclaimers to separate us from the responsibility of our lack of conclusive results are the actual nature of our data collection. Because we collected the CO2 data way before we actually got grade data, the disparity in time is definitely cause for alarm and is really not acceptable in any other situation except for a Centerville High School SAP Statistics final project. Our next disclaimer is we were not actually able to conduct an SRS, as we did not have enough teachers respond to us to where we could select them from a larger population. Another problem that arose was actually response bias, as we had to get the voluntary cooperation of the teachers that provided grade data to us, and we were not allowed to just gather grade data from all the teachers that we measured CO2 data from. And our final disclaimer is simply this pair of socks. Not actually that pair of socks represents the matched pairs experimental design that we would have conducted if we were given the chance to do this project again. The matched pairs experiment would actually improve upon our observational study, as if we conducted a matched pairs experiment, we could determine causality and not just see an association.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.